bro, Tyler Durden is the good guy. Like when I first watched Fight Club, I thought he was like the third act goes out of its way to convince you that Tyler Durden is the bad guy, right? You go the whole movie, and big spoilers for Fight Club, by the way. You go the whole movie, it's like, okay, on the first watch, maybe you pick up Tyler's a figment of, I'll call him Jack, the main character, his imagination. Maybe you don't, but either way, the third act is like, okay, now Tyler went from, oh, self improvement is masturbation, man. You gotta be yourself, you gotta be authentic, you gotta, all these things. And then in the third act, it then pivots to, and now I'm going to commit terrorism, and we're going to destroy the world, or I guess at least America's, but really in effect the world's, what is it, credit card history? Destroy 11 credit card company buildings. Like, that's crazy. And on the first watch, I left and I was like, wow, Tyler kind of sucks. He's, he takes advantage of Marla, he commits acts of terror, he's mean to Jack, like he's kind of a bad guy. But like rewatching it with the perspective of like I've been getting into like Jung and psychodynamics and stuff, and for my psych class I wrote an essay about the psychodynamics and social psychology of Fight Club. So Jack, in my view, manifests Tyler to basically be a stand-in for his ego, because it's not his id, and the personality iceberg. It's like, this is, let's say this is the surface. Really, all your cognitive awareness, conscious awareness is, like a little hump here. That's your ego. There's like a little side bit in the iceberg, that's your superego, and then underneath all of this is your id and your superego. And your id is like the primal forces. It wants food, it wants sex, it wants anything pleasurable. It's like your like the monkey brain, you know what I mean, like the part that evolves millions of years ago to keep us alive, basically. If you look at it from a neuroscience standpoint, some people would call the id like everything other than your developed frontal lobe, basically. The parts that keep you breathing, the parts that keep you eating, and the parts that keep you procreating. Like, those are all id parts. Now, your id, take a child or an infant. An infant is just an id, but at some point it realizes that it needs to create an ego, and then by extension, identity, but that's later, to get what it wants most effectively. So this has to do, then this gets into cognition. So you're not consciously aware of your desires as they arise, but you are aware when your id wants to negotiate with your ego. Your ego is a diplomat, essentially. And so your conscious sense of self is sort of this is a bit misleading, perhaps, but a fabrication, if you will, of your senses of wanting, your senses of your interactions with your environment. And you understand, like, just because I want food doesn't mean I'll get food. I have to work, I have to do this, and then blah 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 blah. And so your ego finds these clever ways to sort of get food the best it can. So like, let's say you grow up and you get food whenever you have good behavior. Your ego will say, oh, the id wants food, and a good way to do that is through good behavior. So if I want to maximize food, I'll be a good person. So then the ego not only is strategizing, I guess, implicitly to work with the id, it's also developing itself to better mask the id's intentions. So you go from, I want food, so I'll do this thing, to I want food and I'll scream about it, right? So to I want food, so I'll be good, however my parents see as good, and I'll be safe and blah blah blah, to I'm a good person. Like at some point it like you transcend that. There's like a leap, and then you start getting food, without needing to appease your parents and blah 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 blah, but you still think you're a good person because you learned that at such a critical early age when you didn't have the faculties to self-reflect. And then you have your superego, which is right and wrong, it presides over the sort of extra things the ego can't quite cover. So and the id, it sort of supervises both of them. It keeps them both in check. So the whole fabrication of you being a good person, your superego will then attribute, okay, a good person does this, a good person does this, right and wrong is this, all these different things. And that's what your superego does. Your superego is literally above the ego in terms of cognition. So all of this is to say, Tyler Durden is the ego of Jack personified. Dissociative identity disorder, for example, right? A lot of people say he has that. Sure, yeah, that's a good, because he meets a lot of criteria for that. I mean, I'm obviously not a professional, but if you look into it, right, dissociative identity disorder has, let's see, a lot of times a character trait that comes up is avoidance. Jack is very avoidant. Again, the main character is Jack. Jack is very avoidant. The whole movie, even when he manifests Tyler, he's still avoidant of Tyler. Or at least his teachings. He's always avoiding his problems. He goes to the what are they? Self-help, like therapy. He does all that stuff. He has the IKEA nesting instinct or whatever. These addictions are all just a way from the run away from his own emptiness, basically. And that's a big part of dissociative identity disorder, very avoidant. So what a lot of times happens is then they say, all right, well, a psychodynamic approach to dissociative identity disorder would say, well, I'm avoidant, so I'll avoid my problems by manifesting them into this other person. I'm not the one doing the bad things. I'm a good person. This other person that wants these wants, will do it. So it's a way it's arguably you could look at it as the ego distances itself and disassociates, which Jack commonly does, in order to let the id do what it wants. So it's sort of a failure of the ego's diplomacy. You could look at dissociative identity disorder that way, which is very interesting. Obviously, this wouldn't apply in all cases, but in Jack's case, I could totally see that argument. So regardless, for all intents and purposes, Tyler is his ego. He doesn't operate in principles of right and wrong. He seems to also be above primal desires because while Tyler is sexual, he only acts out Jack's sexual fantasies. And even when he seems to be operating, and again, ego and id and all these, like, when you say somebody is egotistical, you would say, they're full of themselves, maybe even they have some narcissistic traits, but when I say ego, it's the part of him that's trying to negotiate with his primal desires. It's a big part of his cognition of himself, So yeah, but that's what Tyler is. That's what I'll say, right? So then in this way, Tyler's always working in Jack's best interest because the ego is just trying to manage the id, really. The superego tries to manage both of them, but so Tyler really is working in Jack's best interest, and when he says that he is. I've come to believe. And also an interesting thing is when he tells Jack not to bring him up, that would defeat the purpose of Tyler. If people find out, and I mean this is a rumor in the Fight Club already, but if people find out that Tyler Durden, or as they know him, Tyler Durden, because Jack calls himself Tyler Durden, if they realize that Tyler Durden and Jack are not the same person, that's going to undo all the hard work Tyler did to try to have Jack accomplish the things he wanted to do, because Tyler just wants to see Jack's id happy, basically. And since Jack's ego is so avoidant and can't do anything, he manifests another ego to carry out his fantasies for him. He's fulfilled. He's driven. He gets Marla. It's a rom-com. It all starts because of Marla, honestly. And in some ways, he created Tyler in a response to Marla. When he saw Marla was so similar to him in terms of like the nihilism and all those different, addictive tendencies that they have, yet she was different because she wasn't avoidant of her problems. She seemed to wallow in them. Same path, completely different mindsets. You know what I mean? So I believe, he made Marla in response, or he made Tyler in response to Marla. That would be a good, that would be a safe bet in my opinion. But regardless, with this view, everything Tyler does, even like the acid scene when Tyler pours acid on Jack's hand and he's like, be there, just be here, be present. And Jack's like going to his power animal. He's like retreating to his cave. He's looking for the penguin, looking for Marla. And then he's like reciting all the things they told him to do. And then like Tyler's like slapping him and he's like, listen, man, this is the single most important moment of your life and you're missing it. Like, Tyler's right. Like, Tyler is abusing Jack, yes. And it's like, he's obviously, Jack isn't a healthy person, but Jack wants this for himself, which is interesting. But yeah, really from this psychodynamic perspective, and again, this isn't even my opinion necessarily, but Tyler is working in Jack's best interest. Jack wants to be able to be more competent. How can he be more competent? Looking fear straight in the eyes and dealing with it in ways that are more, I guess, spiritually his own. He is not using other people's ways. He's not using what he learned at the group therapy. He's using his own ways. So yeah, there's one example. Another example is when Tyler says, self-improvement is masturbation, or something along those lines. That's the quote, I think. Again, Tyler, he's saying that because Tyler gets reactive to people that do self-improvement as a means to compensate, right? Tyler's reactive to that because that's what Jack's doing. Jack didn't go the self-improvement route and how to compensate for his own shortcomings and failures to be authentic and feel meaning in his life. Rather, he went the other way. He wallowed in it and ran, he didn't wallow in it. He ran away. Rather than wallowing in it, there we go, and doing something about it, he ran away from it. But Tyler doesn't like either path, really. You know what I mean? Tyler sees both of them as avoidant in his own Tyler way. And so he offers Jack a third path, a straightforward, like, all right, you're gonna do this, you're gonna be driven, you're gonna get Marla. You just have to do it my way. That's all Tyler asks. And his way is very destructive, but could we not see that Jack was already on a destructive path? Like, this whole time, even the fact that it was so destructive that Jack, like, here's the thing, right? Jack would never have taken control unless Tyler was as drastic as he was. Yes, he killed Meatloaf, or got Meatloaf killed. Yes, he blew up the freaking credit card companies, and yes, he freaked out freaking Marla and probably traumatized her, and, Project Mayhem and blah, blah, blah. But was Jack going to ever take control of his life any other way? If that's what it took for him to take control of his life? It wasn't once, it wasn't twice, it was like 3-4 times that Tyler offered him ways to take control of his life. And at first he bit and he moved to his house, they were doing the Fight Club, but then after a while he was like putting the brakes on with the whole Marla. Like, once Jack saw Tyler getting Marla, he couldn't make the switch and be like, oh, I want Marla, and he couldn't admit that to himself because it's a rom-com. That's when Jack digs his heels in and Tyler keeps trying to drag him because, again, Tyler is a part of Jack that wants the best of him and for him. So I think Tyler gets more extreme because Jack gets more extreme. So there's literally no other way for Jack to get better. He can't get good unless Tyler's horrible. You know what I mean? So, and I mean, it results in him shooting himself, and that's interestingly, I think I saw the director say, Jack has to kill his teachers, his parents, and then God, So his teachers are, I guess you could say, the group therapy people, with the power animal, like killing your teacher with the acid, you know what I mean? Like, that won't work. You need to find your own path. You need to find your own way to deal with the pain. He has to kill his parents. That sort of happens implicitly. I guess that already happened before the story, because when Tyler and Jack shared their little thing in the bath about their parents and how they weren't very present in their lives, and, they had the same story because they're the same person, but they killed their parents, and then they had to kill their God. Well, who's Tyler's God? He is God to himself, you know what I mean? Because he's just a projection of Jack's own ego. Jack needs to kill his ego. Whoa, ego death. So shooting himself symbolically kills him. So when I realized that, I was like, wow, this movie's so good. And then the Pixies start playing, and then you came to my life or something at a very strange time. What a quote. Anyway, those are my thoughts about Tyler Durden and Fight Club and yada yada yada. I should make use of this mic so I could look like a, you know, a little announcer. But yeah, those are my thoughts. A little change of scenery on this channel. Yeah, let me know what you thought. Comments, and tell me if you made it this far in the video. Tell me if you like Fight Club. Tell me what movie I should watch next. I'm like halfway through A Clockwork Orange, and that movie's freaking that movie's really good but really messed up, bro. Oh man, Stanley Kubrick. I might make a video about The Shining soon. But yeah. Alright gang, see ya.